Welcome back to Elevation Mindset Summit. Welcome and thank you for spending this time. Happy time zone, if we want to use that as our way of speaking this, because I know we've got people all over the world today. We are going to be talking about moving from nostalgia to hopeful. We have a couple of questions for you, like, how often do you say, back in the day, things were so much better? How often do you say, my life now is great versus my life used to be great? And are you really present in your life right now? Are you living in this moment? And those are some of the things we're going to be discussing today as we're going from nostalgia to hopeful. So, Suzanne, can you tell me a little bit for you, kind of what comes up for you when you think of this word nostalgia?
Yeah. So, guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. My name is Suzanne Buchanan, for those of you who haven't been with us yet. And I am one half of Elevation Mindset. Michael and I started showing up online to do these sessions actually right into COVID, when we saw that it felt like the rest of the world kind of shut down. And we felt like no one was showing up and having that deeper conversation that really matters. No one was out there talking about how are we going to get to where we need to go? How are we going to become the person we're called to be? And how are we going to build the right community along the way? Michael and I both love communities like Mind Valley and the Lifebook community, because in there we find people who are committed to living the best life they can. And those are the exact kind of people we want to reach. So we love that you show up. We thank you for my background, by the way. I am a career communications specialist. I'm a mediator, a conflict resolution practitioner, and I love bringing people together for conversations that matter. And when Michael and I came up with this topic, from nostalgia to hope, we really wanted to talk and to reach people who might not be fully living in the present. And we felt very passionate about it. And when Michael asked those questions, I would really love to know, for those of you here, is there a time that you keep returning to in your mind and saying, oh, I love that time in my life. I wish that was now. How many of you feel a sense of nostalgia? Does that resonate? Back when? Michael, do you remember you were talking about, Michael's done work with men's teams, a lot of coaching. And this was something that when Michael said it, it really resonated. Talk about the guys in the group and what their
First of all,
prime time was.
the guys in a group is actually a no-no, because it is a men's team, and that is
Men's
definitely,
team.
you do push-ups, 10 push-ups for each, or if you say them both in the same sentence, it's 100. But
Oh
that's a
no, so I
different
have to do
story.
push-ups now.
Yes.
Okay.
Wasn't a standard you committed to, but for me, I actually had joined a men's team organization right about the time that I was really looking to take my life to a new level, because I had just ended a 6-year relationship. My whole world had kind of turned upside down again for the 4th or 5th time, and it was time to reach out and actually build out, who I am and redefine who I was. But what I found is probably half or maybe even more of the men that were in that organization, a lot of the time the stories were 10, 20 years ago, I did. as well as I know quite a few people in my life where they are stuck in their memories rather than in their present, where it really felt like, they peaked in high school sort of thing. And whenever, the stories you're telling on a regular everyday basis is things that aren't in your present moment, what are you doing with your life now? If you aren't necessarily bragging about your current relationship, but you're bragging about the relationship you had in your 20s, how are you showing up in your relationship now?
Mm.
And that really, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of touch on this is, and there's I think a very different perspective of, because I noticed that Yvonne and Suzanne are talking about vintage shopping in the chat, which, yes, that's a style thing, and it certainly can bring back some memories from that past. And like many of the subjects that we've talked about up to this point, it's not that there's an absolute that is bad, you must stop doing it, but it really comes, at least for me, of this is, don't stay there.
Mm.
Because when we stay in our past, we're not looking towards our future. And it can be really difficult, especially when we're doing things like Lifebook, whenever all of our beliefs are based on something from when we are 6 or 8 or 10 or 15. And what are your beliefs now that you've had the opportunity to experience the world, experience life on your own terms? And setting a vision for your future, it's really difficult if you are doing that solely from what you did, not yesterday or last week or last month, but what you did a decade or 3 ago. So it's, as we were starting this, one of the things that came up is, what have you done for me lately kind of thing comes up, but not from this negative perspective of, you've always got to scratch my back. But like the name of my business, just to introduce myself, my name is Michael Dankloffs, and I consider myself a life vision outfitter. And the name of my business is Elevate Your Best, because your best is going to be different every single moment. You're going to have a bad night. You're going to have a great day. You're going to actually get enough sleep. You're going to get enough nutrition, or you're not. So your best is going to be different every day. But in my opinion, is my practice now is what's going to show up whenever I am on game day, whenever I'm at that big interview, when I'm doing that big show, whenever I'm actually in a coaching session. All the work I do in between, in the present moment, is what prepares me for the next level of best of how I'm going to show up. Because if I'm only ever sharing with you the knowledge that I read in this book on the shelf 25 years ago, I'm doing you a disservice. I'm doing myself a disservice by doing that, because it's how have I applied that over the last 20 years that's going to be far more relevant than, might as well just hand you the book. And that's why this particular subject was actually really powerful for me, because I want to know, how are you growing? How are you elevating? How are you building rather than coasting? So some of that, really kind of comes down to is kind of what our past tells us about ourselves. But Suzanne had actually pointed out, as we were preparing for this, is the past is not meant to hurt you. It's we don't need to hang on to it until it does. And at least for me, in my journey, is I can certainly hang on to all the painful moments. I can hang on to all the bad choices. I can hang on to the bad places that I've been. But that once again, doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. When we were talking about this, at first we were thinking about the people who, they live in that reverie, they live in the past, and they want to go back to those good old times, or whatever that was. Like Michael said, maybe they felt like they peaked in high school or whatever that was. And then I realized, you know what? Many of us also live in the past trauma. We live in the bad part. And we hang on to that bad part and use that as an excuse not to move forward into the present. And so, what do you think PTSD is? What do you think all of the traumas that we work to undo in our lives are? We're hanging on to a past. And that's not nostalgia, of course, that's the trauma side of it. But look at what happens when we replay these loops. When we replay the positive loops, even from the past, we miss out on the present and the future. When we replay the negative loops from our past, we miss out on enjoying the present and future. So no matter what, don't stay. Use the past to grow from. Can be your lever, can help you on your journey. So, Michael, you talked about the men's team and the people that you knew. Have you ever found yourself in that position where you were hanging on too tightly to what could have been?
Certainly. I mean, the only reason why I think it irritated me is because I'd been there, and that was part of who I was as well. I do have those moments, those dark moments in my past, and that idea of I can't go beyond it because that defined me. So, and at the same time is, especially when we look at our friends, and if we have friends that we've been with for 20 or 30 years, that knowing, are they people in our lives that are helping us move forward, or are they still, are they partying like it's 1999? Is that really where you still want to be? And I enjoy what I'm doing, but I look at so many of the people and even who I was, of being lost in playing the classic video games in order to kind of get that dopamine fix, and in these simple things that I remember putting quarters into an arcade game. We can now do that at home. I can do that on my phone at this point. But I have found myself kind of falling back into that of what's the rut, what's the habit, what's the cycle that was the cycle of sabotage for me 20 years ago. And for me, it's a matter of recognizing when that comes up and realizing, is this still where I want to be? And that, from both the trauma side, from the shadow side, as well as those things that I've done that were abasing in the past, I know I need to own it, because all of that was because of the choices that I made, good and bad. But I don't want to live there, and that's the place where, I'm, as an example, it's one of those things, like I mentioned relationships in the past, and my wife and I right now have this habit where we alternate who plans date night each month. And it's a surprise to the other person. And the idea is to kind of one up the last thing that we did, rather than going back and doing the same thing we did 2 or 3 years ago. And it's this idea of, let's create new memories so we have new stories to tell, rather than solely it being about talking about the first time we met and staying there. Let's actually, I mean, most recently for us, kind of building in towards that new adventure that we get to do. I was on a horse 2 weeks ago, which is the first time in 30 years that was even possible, out in the beautiful Valley of Fire out in Vegas. I want to create those new memories. I want to create those new experiences, those new adventures. And I can certainly, get stuck on the fact that I haven't been able to do this for the last 30 years because I'm over 300 pounds. But instead, not only am I actually moving forward, but my wife is so supportive of us creating these new adventures that she found the place we could do it, because we both are growing our relationship to move forward. And that's kind of this hopeful side of things that I want to kind of instill in everyone and remind you of, because we know it, is we need reminders every once in a while of, if you're
Yeah.
not actively trying to grow together, you will be growing apart.
Mhm. And when you're in nostalgia, I think it's really important for people to understand this. When you're living in the past, you are leaving everyone in your present behind. That is not faithful. That is
Mhm.
not partnership. That
Mhm.
is a time where they are not present. Even if they were there, they're not who they were at that time. And so it really betrays where you are now. And as someone who knows what it's like to almost not have a tomorrow, for someone who knows how fragile life can be, guys, you don't want to miss out on the here and now. And you want those tomorrows. So, what are the signs you think, Michael, when somebody is living too much in the past? Because we may think we're okay, but what does that look like? What are kind of the symptoms that we can look at?
So there's a couple of things that I've noticed. It was actually funny. One of my wife's friends, when we first met them, made the comment of, "Oh, it's a new person. I can tell all my old jokes again." And that's one of those first signs. If you're actually saying the same jokes, if you're telling the same story, not only to other people but to yourself over and over again, if it's the same story, you may
Mm,
be stuck in the past, especially if it is that story from your past that you keep retelling. I mentioned that, are you parting like it's 1999 or 2029? Where are you parting towards, in which direction? um but also, if every time you get together with your friends or with your partner or with your colleagues at work, are you past oriented or are you future oriented? Are you still reminiscing about that night of drinking and that adventure that you went on before? And if that's the only thing that you get together with your friends for, you may be stuck in that nostalgic space
yeah.
in your past.
And this one was a big one for me. When you look at the constellation of connections in your life, what is their orientation? What is your primary point of connection with them? And these are the people you choose to spend your time with. Is it based on history? Is it based on the present? Is it based on the future? And I've gotten to a point in my life where I only have present and future oriented connections. And let me tell you, the closest core knit of those connections, one of them I've known since I was 4 years old. One of them I met in my 20s. And that's been 2 decades, by the way. But, so we're not saying you could only have new friends, but the orientation matters. And the conversations, how do you know the orientation? Maybe you talk a little bit about the past, but if you're not having those questions about how you're growing, what you're building, where you're going, if you don't have that level of connection with people in your life, then your orientation is most likely in a past.
Also,
And
that
yeah,
if someone finishes your story for you that you're telling, you might be stuck in the past. You've told that story enough times that they know your story as good as you do. I'd much rather people know my mission and be able to relate that back to me rather than some story from my past.
exactly. My favorite people are the ones that I can continue to get to know for the rest of my life. And what does that mean? Yeah, it means they have depth, but but they're still living. They're still becoming, they're making new stories. I love that Michael and his wife, they've set an intention to make their own stories and to give each other experiences. That's powerful. And that's future oriented. That's present oriented. It is not nostalgia. Now they will find themselves old and gray and a little nostalgic about that time Michael mounted that horse. Right. That's beautiful memories, but they're not living there. They're going to visit. They're going to visit. But there's beauty happening now. And so one of the other signs that somebody needs help moving from nostalgia to hope, what's really behind that, guys, is something happened where they lost faith in who they are and who they're continuing to become. And when Michael and I started this conversation, you know, and he talked about the guys that he heard that talked about their best life was in high school, I really emphasized the compassion that you need to have to understand that that's someone who's given up on who they are now. And I know we blow them off, but I want us to be aware that those are the people that something happened where they know they're not living up to their potential. They're afraid of taking a chance. Somewhere they lost their belief that the today and the tomorrow is going to be even better than before. And so I want you guys, because this is the professional growth community, right? A personal growth community. This is the personal development. This is your heart and where you're going. Just know that when we're living in nostalgia, there's something we're avoiding now. And I want us to have compassion and grace with that and to know that, even if they're a jerk about it. That happens too.
The other thing I want to point out too is that many of the subjects that we've actually talked about for the past, it's coming up on 3 years now, is because we've been through this. I know for me, I was on probation for a while and in therapy in order to really resolve, you know, that past, that trauma that I created for myself. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just trauma that's happened to you. It may be by you as well. And it took me a 6-year relationship to resolve that in myself, to be willing to actually move forward in my life and actually get to a point where I can look towards a future that's hopeful rather than purely feeling like I'm stuck based on those choices in my past. It's that there's several books out there. There's people who talk about the compound effect, as well as that this choice will change your trajectory a little bit. But every opportunity you have the choice to change that trajectory by a little bit. And it can be downward, it can be upward. And I know for a long time for me, it was actually like nosediving as well. And it took a lot of that inner investigation with help and support before I could actually turn that curve around of, yes, I have something to live for. Yes, I'm actually, you know, someone who's worthwhile to be in a relationship again. I'm someone that's actually worthwhile to invest time and energy into. And it's a tough spot when you're in that space where you've lost hope in who you can be. And it did really require me to examine my beliefs, examine my identity, examine, you know, kind of go back and actually look at, well, where did that come from? Yes. Take it apart, put it back together, clean it up, and then use that and build the foundation that I could then springboard off of to move into the future. And that's really kind of what we're suggesting for this. If you're really still telling stories, If you're still stuck in that past space, it's an opportunity to go back and investigate. Why are you stuck there?
Yeah.
What made that period the most important? I think, Suzanne, you had a comment about your brother and music.
Oh, yeah. I have a brother that, God love him, he's stuck in a time warp. And it's bad. It's bad. It's so hard to watch someone, we talked about the symptoms of how you can recognize when you're trapped in a period. His music, it never went beyond the 70s. And it sounds funny until you realize the rest of him didn't either. He's an older brother, and he started withdrawing from friends, from his oldest friends, from people who absolutely loved him. And it got to a point where his friends, and this is a brother that's 12 years older than me, were reaching out to me on Facebook. I'm trying to get a hold of your brother. Is he okay? I love him. He was a best friend to me. And I talked to my brother and I said, these people love you. They're trying to reach you. And in a beautifully vulnerable moment, he said, I know, but I'm not the person I should be. I didn't grow into the person I was supposed to be. And he recognized he was stuck. To have an older brother say that to his little sister, basically looking at me saying, I'm trapped and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, the one thing you can do is let yourself be loved, because you're worth loving. And so he reconnected with the friend, and he forgave himself a little bit, baby steps. But watching someone stay trapped in who they were because they know they're not becoming who they were meant to be. Guys, when you love someone, it's heartbreaking. And we want more for you and for those that you love. So, Michael, what do we do? What do we do when we're there?
One of the past we'd talked about this. I want to kind of tell a little bit of a story to kind of get there. Is one of my best friends in college, one of the things that I noticed was that he was drawing all the time. And I, at the same time, saw so many people in the same community saying, I can't draw. Mostly because they weren't drawing. They weren't being creative. They weren't actually practicing that which they enjoyed. And therefore, so the question really is, did they stop being able to draw because they had no talent, or because they just stopped drawing that they had no talent? So there's this big, difference between, yes, there's talent, but there's also this practice component. And especially when we're talking about how we move forward, is we need to actually wake up those creative juices. We need to actually start up that what if concept in our lives to open up the doors to this future that's actually out there, rather than stuck in the corner of what our past is actually defined for us. And it's this idea of really allowing yourself to look forward to something that maybe isn't what you've always done. Maybe is something brand new that maybe even scares you a little bit.
Risk.
And this is actually, everyone has a different risk tolerance for sure. But it being zero is not okay, because then we don't grow. Being able to allow yourself to be creative, to that invitation that your first gut instinct is, there's no way I'll do that. Instead, maybe just get in this position of visualizing, what if I did do that? What if I did go on that trek across the state or across the country of where I live on a whim. Because what adventure will we create? What spontaneity comes from that is allowing yourself to be spontaneous in one area of your life. That can be the beginning, the spark that allows you to be able to dream bigger. They can actually take those dreams and turn them into visions. You had a quote from Ed Milet about that. What was that?
Which one?
About dreams and fantasies.
Oh, guys, your dreams are not accidental. They're there for a reason. And they are usually the person you were meant to be. And they're not there to distract you. They're there to remind you of what's possible. And this, we're not talking about, the dream you have where you end up driving a coconut. We're talking about the type of dream you have of the kind of life you want to live. The vision that you feel like you could never achieve. Those are gifts. Those are clues. Those are hints that are a part of you, that are meant for you. They're meant just for you. And they're whispers of the person we were meant to be.
So some of this is really a matter of those muscles that we've let atrophy because we don't use them. Is let's actually put them to work. Let's give ourselves permission to dream for something a little bit bigger than what our parents wanted for us, what our partner wants for us, what our kids want for us. We have this opportunity to live the best version of ourselves. And it's one of my favorite things about the whole core values of life book in the first place, of self-actualization, of being the best version of you, because that sets an example, that sets a momentum, that actually allows other people to see what's possible in the world. And that can be contagious. And to do that with all of your creative juices flowing, being willing to step outside of the norm, the everyday, the nostalgic moments, because this is the job that I've been working at for 30 years. And of course, I'm going to go back to that job because that's what I've known. It's a very different culture. It's a very different landscape now where we have the possibility to make changes in our life. If you're staying where you're at, bring a new energy to that. Bring an excitement to something that before was boring. Find the excitement in something. Rather than, wow, I'm going to this job again. I'm going to this PTA meeting again. I'm going to this. Oh, I can't believe I'm doing that. Is what if it was exciting? What if there was something you can enjoy about that? What if you would actually be open to the possibility that you could help change someone's life because of a few words that you share with them? Rather than stuck in the space of, I've never been able to help anybody ever. Or I said that one thing 10 years ago that actually set that person and got them upset. Let's focus on what we can create, what we can bring to the world, because we're willing to step outside of the box we've drawn for ourselves.
Mm. We always draw our own boxes, don't we? There's no one else that are drawing boxes to contain us. That's a self job. That's an inside job, guys. So no matter what, there is no past that's trapping you. There's only you that's decided to stay somewhere. So why? When we talk about what's the path to get out, to be more future oriented, to at least live in the now. Michael and I are like a broken record for 3 years. Examine your beliefs. What is it you believe? about the past, about what may not happen now. What does your faith tell you? That faith in life, that faith in yourself, that faith in the world. What does the moral arc of justice look like in your life? We always start there, right, Michael?
Well, we certainly circle around that quite a bit, as we, touch on this. It really always kind of comes back to whether we believe it's possible. And in this day and age, with the technology that we have available to us, almost anything is possible. It may take us 20 years to create it, but it's going to be possible. It may take us 10 years to get away from it, depending on what it is. Are you willing to invest the time in it because you can see the value and where you're going rather than where you were?
Yeah, and I would even argue that those 10 and 20 years to get there, guys, that's not the world changing to meet our vision. That's how long we're in our own way. That's how long we're taking to become. What if we just became? What if we decided? What if we refused to believe it was a long uphill slog and a tiring, grueling journey, and we decided we could become right now? What if you didn't have to go through years to become? What if you just decided? Are we brave enough to believe? Are we brave enough to take action? Are we brave enough to admit, are we courageous enough to admit that we're the limiter of our identity? We're the ones that are living in the past. We're the ones that are not living in the now. We chose this. We did this. We can undo this. We can go. We can go as fast and far as we want, and we can go now. What if it was just a matter of belief? You choose. You choose, guys. Every minute of every day, every second of every minute of every day, we choose. And Michael talked about the 1%. The 1% decision in the right direction might just be a slight tweak, but that tweak produces an entirely different trajectory. So what if we made that 1% change even 4 times a day? Guys, it's changing our lives. Believe. So what are we building now? Where are you going? What are you guys working to build right now? Michael, what are you building?
In which part of my life? Because I've got this beautiful thing called the life book. It's funny because people always ask me, so what are you up to? What projects are you working on? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm building out my house. I'm actually finishing rooms. So I've actually got that moving. Talked to somebody about getting spray foam put in because so then I can have space to have guests over. So I can have a guest room. I'm also building out my business as well. And actually, I've invited people to an open house the first week of December. So to bring people in as new life bookers, hopefully, with a year-long program in my coaching business. In my job as well, we're actually rebranding our product. So we actually just had this whole, after 40 years of the company running, we're finally picking a mission. So it's amazing how businesses could do that. We actually have on the docket with my relationship, we're going to be going to a yoga retreat in December as well, which is this place where breakfast is silent, where you actually get your food and you sit down and it's a completely silent meal. You get to focus on your gratitude, on the food that's in front of you. And at the same time, we get this opportunity to get away into this high energy space. So, I mean, that's just a few of the things that I'm working on, because, you know, I am hopeful for my future in building out. Working with we've got today we have game night going on. So I've actually invited a bunch of people over. We do that once a month as one of my goals in my social life category. And tomorrow's family dinner, which is in my parenting category. So I think that's quality of life and family, or parenting and social and love and and career. So
I love it.
Each one is actually, you know, one of those steps forward, because I know that it's possible.
Beautiful. Guys, we want to hear from you. What are you building? What are you where are you growing right now? Put it in the chat, come on live. We want to know. What are you building? What are you growing? For me, I'm working on plotting a small revolution at work. They brought me on to completely change their brand and upgrade. So I'm a troublemaker. I'm going to do that. Yvonne, hi. It's your hand up.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you guys this month?
Good.
It's funny because
Carrie just did the declutter the hour before this.
And so while this has been on, I've been doing
My clothes going through, and it fit right in of
getting rid of the old and
bringing on the new and the transformation. And
listening to you guys while
while I was doing it, I probably got rid of triple, because that's not who I am anymore. So I thought that was really an interesting connection that I never would have made with
decluttering your clothes, because it's all nostalgia. It's all,
I used to be that size, or, oh, I remember when. And when you were talking, I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
and I could put it
in
in
the donate box. And so you actually made the
decluttering process.
so much more strong.
And I have way more to
donate, and I go through my stuff quite regularly.
That's awesome.
But a lot of it was you're hanging on to it for nostalgia, and she had talked about that. But I'm like, nah, I don't. And then I'm like, I was in nostalgia when I was a smaller size. I mean, I've only gone up one size. It's not like a big deal. It's like,
yeah.
But it even that, you know, that 15 pounds, you know, once you hit mid 50s or whatever. But it was really interesting. But also when I was vintage shopping with my daughter last week, and she's 17, and even today she came out or yesterday, and she was wearing her top that she bought, and I'm like,
cute.
I swear to God, I had the same. But instead of being nostalgic, I'm excited for her, because you remember that age, remember how much fun, and it almost let me transfer my nostalgic feelings to excitement for her,
for the present. Exactly. That's the perfect direction. I love that. And Yvonne, it's so funny because I'm moving in a few weeks, and I know that, like, I'm just already thinking about that decluttering and like the chance. I love the chance to redefine, to be intentional about redefining our identity, how we show up in the world. Clothes are part of that for me. Really interesting. I love it. Thank you. That's a really fun share.
Career switch.
Yes.
Before it was, I worked in a bank.
Like, I haven't worked in a bank since I had
my oldest daughter. She's 21. Like, that's not my lifestyle. So those are like poof, gone. And same with even before COVID, I was going to work.
But I'm not now. I'm working
from home. And it is a complete, and
it's a different reality.
Am I going to go back to work? Oh God, no. You couldn't pay me enough to have to go to an office. So why would I need those clothes? But it wasn't something that I had thought about. I hadn't even thought about it until till today. Between the 2 calls, it's like, oh, this is easy. I can just donate everything. And you always wear the same clothes anyways.
That's
But
so
I think
funny.
it's not just clothes. I think it's transferable to
A lot of different things.
Thank you for sharing that. Donna, I love what you put in the chat. Oh my gosh, big stuff, lots of stuff, like anything else, kitchen sink. I love it. So it's so interesting because usually, you know, we talk about spring cleaning, but there's a theme coming on of decluttering right now that's happening in several people, refocusing on present and future, connect with new people, make time for friends and family, soul searching, working on health and fitness, financial goals, everything. I love it.
And it's
That's so-
amazing because this is one of those things in that this process of life book can certainly trigger some of that as well. And the question is, are you still doing it a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later? Because that's when it gets really exciting, because those little shifts actually change that curve towards the upper.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I know, Lori, it looks like you had unmuted a little while ago. Did you have something to share?
Yeah.
Oh, well, first I wanted to apologize because I had to go because I had a delivery that should have come yesterday. So apologies for that. So I actually missed quite a chunk of what you were saying, but you know, hopefully I'll get to see the recording. But I mean, for me, what I'm currently building is really all of my focus is on my young son, because I feel at the moment there's not a lot, you know, going for young people. I mean, definitely in the UK, I mean, you've probably heard that we've got one crisis after the other, you know, falling down schools and hospitals, people can't buy homes. And I'm just really focusing on helping my son and other young people, because I really feel that in the present economy that they're being exploited. And I want to make sure that my son, who's a very generous person, I mean, and which I'm very pleased about that, because I want him to understand about giving and about love clothes and I love things, but I also love good mental health, you know, and we want to actually do something, especially for young people, you know, around to live that can very easily lead to poor mental health. And so, yeah, so that's, you know, that's where I'm at the moment.
Absolutely. I think, you know, one of the thought leaders I listened to, he's come upon a theme that I really identify with. And he said, you know, there's so many wars going on, politics, economy, all kinds of things happening. The real war is an inside job. And the best way we can prepare ourselves for what we're facing globally and in every community. And I know I pay attention to what's happening in the UK. My background is in global conflict, and I'm a global analyst. And I know the tensions, I know the housing crisis, I know, like, things are crazy. And the best defense we have is personal excellence. It is to know our values. It is to know who we are and what we stand for. And by building that up, and honestly, to the point where we are showing the world and we are living by our values, we are treating others with these values. Our products go into the world. That alone, that commitment to personal excellence becomes viral and contagious. And when you walk in a room, you are not the thermometer that changes temperatures. You're the thermostat that can help impact the entire room. When you are a person who lives by their values, who lives by that moral fortitude, when you know your mission, when you know your vision, when you know you are meant to give your gifts to this world, that is going to change things. If we showed up like that, everything else changes. Yeah, I love that commitment to your son. That's beautiful.
Yvonne, did you have something else to share first?
Yes, indeed. Oh, I'm so sorry. Keep on having.
Okay. Well, it's funny because I was going to say something about values, and that's the thing with nostalgia is that old values versus new values.
Thank you.
I can't hear the other girl, so I don't know if everyone has
Trouble with her sound.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
not just you.
Talking, I wasn't sure. But that was, for example, now, because I'm in a different relationship for quite a while, but it's more natural clothing, all of that. So I'm like, why am I keeping polyester stuff when I absolutely do not wear it? But it's
interesting because the values themselves have
changed the way
I eat and the way I use products and the way that I
dress.
And I had already heard all the old products kind of thing, but
I hadn't thought about clothes. I was like, I don't wear polyester, or rarely. Sometimes we're limited, but there's
so much we can get rid of
because our values have evolved.
That's right. And you are feeling called to align yourself, to align the rest of your world with your values. For me, where are my financial investments? Am I investing for a 401k or whatever my stock market investments are? Are they in companies I believe in?
I switched that already. I thought to do
so
that.
That's right. That's the process of aligning ourselves. Am I eating the food that's good for my body? You know, I'm the type of person that when I cook for someone, if I don't buy the best ingredients, I have not served them in the way that I feel compelled to serve them. So at every moment of our lives, we are diplomats. We are diplomats to our values, as how we show up sends messages to the world. Our actions send messages to the world. Our beliefs inform our actions, which changes the world. So you guys have power to do this, and to do this, to live with these values means, guess what? You're valuing the present and the future, not just the past. And that's the most important thing. You can respect it. You can love experiences you've had. But clearly, when you live in your values, that's future oriented. That's present. That's making the most out of now. That's
and I think it makes making decisions easier.
Yeah.
And that's a life book thing, I believe, as well. And it's like, is this with my values or without my values? And the difference in my past versus now, because even when we were vintage shopping and my daughter found a sweatshirt she loved and it was so what I would have worn, the first thing I did was look at the tag. Is it cotton or polyester? Because if it's less than 80% cotton, you're not buying it. So it's also passing those values on to your kids. But then I realized you'd already read the label. So it's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you teach my kids are now growing up with my new values of, natural products. In fact, I think it was one of my youngest daughter or oldest daughter may have influenced that. We probably started doing it about the same time, but it changes everything. So they can still love part of what our past was, but modify it according to our values. And it's still, there's no conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. And I would, that reminds me of another area where I'm growing, where I have lived my values, but I haven't spoken them. Until Michael and I started connecting, I didn't speak them enough. And until Michael and I started showing up, I wasn't sharing the powerful values I have. with others. And I am grateful to Michael for being courageous enough to do this with me for more than 2 years.
And the other thing with that, and it goes with exactly what you just said, because we started doing a lot more natural stuff when we shop at our local farmers market, we got an entirely new friend group that matches those values. So instead of having like trying to explain to someone you really shouldn't use that product because it's horrible for you and the environment, we just found people who have those values. We don't have to change them, and we're already aligned. And then the rest can see if you're happier or healthier or whatever. Like, you know, I look at my mom's, I don't know, medicine cabinet and I cringe, but it's not up to me to take her off, 80 medications because she may need one or two. But I did tell her, you really should analyze, because where I live, they stopped covering a lot of the medications. And I'm like, well, why are you on that? Like, why are you on blood pressure medication? Since when have you had trouble with your blood pressure? She goes, oh, because I have a family history. I'm like, you're friggin' 80. Like, why is the doctor putting you on something that you don't have? And then you're complaining that it's not covered. Like, this is the system. But I didn't say go off your blood pressure medication. I said, why are you on it? And it was interesting because she never questioned that.
Good.
That is almost a nostalgic thing where we just do what we always did. Because I said, how long have you been on it? She's like 30 years. I'm like, oh my gosh. But
that's also the culture.
So nostalgic.
Yeah, that was the culture. You never questioned doctors before.
Yeah.
Suddenly people, thank God for the information age. Like, we're able to find information and we're able to ask questions. And good for you for just starting that question-making machine. I think that is the path of evolution and probably revolution, because we don't question. And then when we start questioning, we open ourselves to different answers. So
and doing what we always did. And that's nostalgia too. We just, I always did that, so I continue to. And you don't have to preach it. You just have to sometimes ask a couple questions to make them think. And they can do whatever they want with it. But it really, like you said, when you're living with your values, you don't have to preach them, even if you tell other people. But I can say, like, Mom, you were my age when you went on that. Like, I'm not on any medication and I'm your genetics.
For you.
So it's just really interesting. Never thought about that before today.
It's one of my least favorite concepts of, well, that's how we've always done it. Well, you're not the same person who began that. So let's actually start doing this a little bit differently, because you're in a different place, a different time. There is different and better technology out now, even if it's going back to the basics. So it's reminding ourselves that how you've always done it isn't necessarily always what's going to need to happen in order to move you forward. So
yeah, and sometimes it's how did our grandparents do it nowadays, because that matches my values far more than like I don't know what it's called before the baby boomers, the old people. I mean, because they would all be over 100 now, right? But that's the thing is it's actually more, I'm aligned with my early grandparents' values, growing stuff on the farm, doing all of that. And the generation baby boomers, I'm not aligned with their values. I don't want a big house. I don't want a big car. I don't want any of that. So it's super, super interesting that sometimes things do skip generations and resurface. And I think in my case, my great grandparents who were homesteaders, all their values that's like my daughter, she's 21. And it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? A homesteader. And she's a cook. That's her dream, be a homesteader. And she's living that life and happy as can be. And I like to think I influenced it, but really it's so nice to see when everything's coming out and they don't say, well, this is the way it was always done. But for that generation, they have to think back to how it was done in a prior generation. Because I agree that that's the way it was always done. Well, I've always been on it. So I think with nostalgia, it is really important to question that. And I never really thought about that, but that's exactly, it's who do we want to be? We can have role models. And I'm like, wow, like these people who came across, like people worry about our problems. And I'm like, these guys had to like fight the cold in a chuck wagon. Like we're capable. We are so capable of doing whatever we set our minds to. And so be careful what you set your mind to.
Exactly. Thank you for kind of wrapping up what we're kind of talking about here. That's so amazing, because it is really a matter of inspecting what we believe and why we believe it, and then bring it into the now so we can then project it into the future. So that really is kind of, sets the tone for what I think just about the takeaway we want everyone to do is open up that belief box and pull them out and actually say, does this still fit me? And if it doesn't, donate it. Maybe not donate it because it may not serve somebody else, but you know what I mean. It really is this opportunity to look at, in Lifebook, it's called your premise statements. It's the beliefs that underlie all your other beliefs. And especially if you've just started, you tend to put in there the beliefs that other people have said. By the time you get to about year 3, you're actually refining them. You're throwing out the ones that were other people's, and you're actually making them your own. And knowing that, once again, yes, you could have done that at year 1 for sure. And I challenge you, if you're just starting to do that, is put down your beliefs, but know that they are going to get refined over time. And it's a matter of getting something out so you have something to refine, so that you can have a place to start from to move forward. And that's really kind of what we want to encourage you to do, is be willing to move forward. Be willing to refine, be willing to be open to the possibilities that just because you've always worn spandex doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to wear spandex. Maybe you're moving into more natural fibers, and that is definitely, a 90s thing, and you don't want to see me in spandex. It's not okay. So, but being open to what serves you now, and what's going to serve you and your community in the future as well. Because I love the fact, Yvonne, you're talking about your values coming through your children, because that is I think it's in one of my premise statements in parenting is that whenever I hear my words coming out of my children's mouths, it's like I know that I'm actually passing through my values to them and through them. So, and fantastic that they're actually representing. Yeah, well, sometimes that comes out too. It's as long as it's the right place and time for the drop of the F-bomb, not in polite company. So,
and we got to listen to our children's values, because we can learn a lot from them as well.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't even know which came first, her switch or my switch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but now we're both all on the same path. And then the younger one just naturally followed there.
Yeah.
And it reinforces as well, as you see the benefits, you end up cycling together. So that's even better, especially as they get into becoming young adults, as they're no longer the person you're telling what to do. They're now your peer, and you get to actually grow with them. So it's beautiful.
It's true.
Children remind us of who we were before the world told us to be something different. And there's a purity in their values that I think enables us to remember the greater part of ourselves. There's a freedom in that. So
totally.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Uh-oh, Dottie, you've got a smirk over there. I want to hear what that laughter is about.
Children are still younger. Yeah. My children are in their 40s now. And so they go through a phase now that they kind of know it all, because you're older. And so now they revert back to the kind of that late teen thing, where now you're getting old. So they know everything again. So just wait. It's fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Ours are 21 to 33 right now, so we're getting
so they're real fun. But now they start to go through this whole thing. Yeah. Just listen to us. We know better. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Beautiful.
I think
guys.
we've kind of gone the stretch here. Thank you for being on this journey with us as we are moving from nostalgia to hopeful. I see smiles on faces, so that's certainly a good sign to me, a good symptom. I really do appreciate you spending this time in your morning or your afternoon, depending on, actually, I'm thinking for most of us, it's our afternoon now. We're getting there at least. So thank you. Because when we have this time together, it's one of the things that Suzanne and I wanted these to be was a conversation. Is it's not just two talking heads. So thank you for contributing to this, because I really appreciate that. Thank you. And look forward to be able to do this as well. We are going to be coming back next month. So we're going to be talking from speechless to empowered. Being able to speak your mind, being able to feel empowered to actually, you have value to bring here too. We want to jump into that now that we've gone through this year of, what was it? I think we started off with obstacle to adversity, and we've talked about things like blame to ownership and saboteur to intentionality. And we've got a couple more items we're going to be covering: speechless to empowered, and then isolation to connectedness. Because so often we see people isolating themselves, like Suzanne was talking about earlier with her brother. And maybe it's even isolating yourself to your core people and not being open to connection with the other people around us, different views, different concepts, different ideas, and being willing to have a dialogue about that. So we hope you join us for those. Thank you again. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
Great
nice
to see
weekend
you.
yourselves. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.